Aki was a shy virgin who gets no hose cause he stays inside playing video games. But everything changes when the hottest gamer girl starts teasing him, but he doesn't know she secretly wants to ride his pogo stick. This story begins with Aki returning home from school and hearing loud music from his apartment. Once inside, he sees Iroha, his best friend's sister, lying on the bed, so he turns the music off and scolds her for bothering the neighbors. Instead of apologizing, Iroha crawls over in a way that would make any simp fold, but Aki tells her to drop the teasing act because it doesn't work on him. He then tells her to leave, but she believes he secretly wants to sniff all her kitty juice, which is all over his bedsheet, but he gets frustrated and sprays her off the bed like a roach. Just then, Aki gets a phone call from his uncle, Makoto, who owns the gaming firm and wants to offer Aki a job. After telling Iroha to act right, he picks up, and his uncle says he can have the job he wants if he accepts a couple of terms. He also asks Aki if he has a girlfriend, but when he hesitates to answer, Iroha starts making freaky sounds to sabotage him. When his uncle notices, Aki says it's a cat and continues fighting Iroha off until his uncle agrees to meet up at a restaurant later so they can discuss the terms he mentioned. After hanging up, Aki tries to scold Iroha, but she is already tired of teasing him and demands that he brings her a cold drink, which annoys him even more. The next day, in class, Aki meets his bestie and Iroha's brother, Ozuma, who apologizes for the trouble his sister caused. He also mentions that Iroha bullies Aki because she likes him, but Aki believes that's cap because if she liked him, she would treat him nicely. After lessons, a classmate tells Aki that a baddie has been asking for him, but it's just Iroha. As he walks over to her, she starts acting all shy in front of everyone and asks if he can walk home with her. He can tell that she is teasing him again, so he agrees and says they should wait for Ozuma, but Iroha refuses. When Aki asks why, she tells him to stop acting like they are not in a relationship. This leaves everyone in class shocked, so Aki drags her to a private corner by the stairs to ask if she has completely lost it. She then reminds him of the phone call with President Makoto yesterday and says she has decided to become his girlfriend, so he has a good answer next time. Aki gets frustrated by this and tries to leave, but she suddenly hugs him from behind and starts confessing her love to him. She admits to knowing that he is doing all this for his future, but also says that she wants to be a part of it. However, just as he starts falling for her charms, she pulls away and says she was only messing with him, causing Aki to get even more upset. Hours later, at a restaurant, Aki meets up with President Makoto, who can't believe Aki already made and published a game by himself. Aki explains that he actually had help from his team, called the Fifth Floor Alliance, and Makoto notes that they have become the most famous game makers in recent times. After thanking him for all the glazing, Aki asks about the terms he mentioned yesterday, but Makoto tells him to pump his brakes so they can get some food first. As soon as the waiter shows up, Makoto turns on Riz mode and tries to get her number, but she gets embarrassed and runs off. However, Makoto says he is just getting started, but Aki finds him so cringe that he heads to the bathroom to clear his head. However, he ignores the sign saying that it's a shared bathroom and ends up in a sus situation with a baddie named Mashiro, who then shatters his ribs in fear. Minutes later, they are both back at the table, but Aki has no idea who she is, until Makoto reminds him that they used to play together when they were younger. After realizing that she is Makoto's daughter and his cousin, Aki asks why he brought her along. Makoto then explains how she became depressed and antisocial because of a traumatic experience in her previous school. As a result, he has decided to let her transfer to his school, but Aki now has to become her fake boyfriend and help her make friends again. Aki is surprised by this, but Makoto says this is the term he spoke about over the phone, leaving Aki no choice but to accept. He then extends his hand towards Mashiro, but she tells him not to get too friendly with her as she has no interest in him. As if that wasn't enough, Makoto tells Aki to never think of getting Mashiro in the sheets, but Aki says it won't be a problem since she already hates his guts. The next day, at school, Iroha meets Aki at the lockers and notices that something is up with him, but when she asks, he tells her to mind her business and heads to class. Minutes later, Mashiro walks into class and introduces herself as Aki's girlfriend, which surprises the entire class. Then, she takes the seat right beside him, but when he tries to talk, she tells him to save it because she still hates his guts for walking into the bathroom while she was taking a dump. After apologizing again, Aki reminds her that they have to behave like a real couple, but Mashiro insists that she will never treat him with love. Minutes later, Ozuma asks Aki why he kept his relationship secret from everyone, so Aki takes him aside and explains what went down yesterday because Ozuma is actually his partner who serves as the programmer in their group. When Ozuma says he is living in a hot rom-com, Aki says he has a better shot at a love life. Ozuma then reminds him that Iroha is in love with him, but this makes Mashiro furious, so Aki says Iroha also hates his guts and only says that stuff to mess with him. Moments later, Taki asks Aki how on earth he got a girlfriend before Grand Theft 6. To avoid more gossip, Aki recalls that Suzuki has a crush on Sumeri and tells him that she likes gym bros. After Suzuki runs off, Mashiro orders Aki to buy her some food, and when he tries to refuse, she threatens to end their little charade. Minutes later, he returns with her food and accepts that she won't even say thank you. As he tries to figure out why she hates him so much, Sumire walks in and demands to see everyone's assignments. Just then, a student apologizes for not bringing his, but Sumire gets pissed and goes on a rant about hating incompetent cowards who fail on their promises. After a grueling lesson, she gets ready to leave, but suddenly stops to invite Aki to the counseling office for a private discussion. As soon as she leaves, everyone surrounds Aki and asks how he can be so calm despite getting called on by the feared venomous queen. He says it can't be anything serious and immediately heads down to the counseling office, where Sumire has already prepped a bunch of torture devices. However, after he sits, she drops to her knees and begs him for mercy. Aki then reminds her of all that hardcore discipline nonsense she was yapping about in class, and she explains that it's all to maintain her aggressive personality for the students. Turns out, Sumire is actually the illustrator for the Fifth Floor Alliance, and contrary to her hard work mantra, she is actually the laziest in the group. After deciding to forgive her, Aki asks for the progress on her recent project, only to learn that she hasn't even started. Pissed off, he tries to roast her alive, but after a lot of begging, he releases her and says she should have asked for help if she was struggling with inspiration. A while ago, Aki went to a book fair to find the perfect illustrator for his gaming company and got shocked when he discovered Sumire's book about a freaked-out chick with the hots for her brother. After he reminds her that he can expose her to the entire school and possibly get her arrested, she apologizes again but insists that she has artist block. Aki then suggests sleeping on it, but she misunderstands and says she can do it with him because he is too old. After he completely flips out on her, she asks if he is really dating Mashiro, so he also explains what happened during the meeting with Makoto. After thanking him for going this far for their group, Sumire asks if he knows anything about what happened in Mashiro's old school, but all he knows is that her previous classmates discovered an important secret and kept bullying her about it until she stopped coming to school. Upon hearing this, Sumire asks Aki to make sure she doesn't experience something similar again. Much later, Aki asks Mashiro if they can walk home together, but she tells him to stay away. This makes everyone wonder if they are actually in a relationship, so she runs away while Aki wonders how he can get close to her. Minutes later, he is at his locker, preparing to leave, when Iroha suddenly hugs him from behind. As usual, Aki tells her to stop acting dumb and get off, but she refuses and asks if he can feel anything squishy. Aki then tells her to save it because he knows her melons are pressing into his back, but after a slight nudge, he realizes that it's worse than that. She isn't wearing any plot armor, and her buttons are loose, which means he is one slip away from getting a face full of milk. He considers pushing her away, but after realizing that she will get exposed, he changes his mind and carries her on his back before taking off. Minutes later, she starts begging to be let down, so he finally tosses her on the ground before seeing that she was serious about not having any plot armor. As they both head home, Aki asks if she knows how he can get close to a chick that hates his guts, but she gets worried that he has already found his soulmate. However, after Aki says it's nothing like that, she promises to help him out. The next day, Mashiro is shocked when Aki offers to help her while looking like a freshly bought love slave. As always, she ignores him, but the psychotic simp behavior continues until she gets fed up and drags him somewhere private. As she demands an explanation, Iroha shows up and admits that she is behind Aki's sudden obsession with becoming her slave. When Mashiro suddenly walks out on them, Aki decides to call it quits for the day. Much later, he and Iroha get back home and are surprised to see Mashiro, who immediately accuses him of stalking her. After he says that they both live here, she gets shocked and asks if he lives together with Iroha. Then, Aki explains the situation with Iroha and how they all live in separate apartments in the same building. When he tries to talk to her again, she flips out and says she hates being so close to him before running into her place. However, the fact that she moved all the way out here makes Aki realize that she is serious about starting over, so he decides to help her no matter what. Several nights later, Aki gets the gang together for a feast to celebrate the successful completion of their latest project. As Sumire drowns her liver with booze, Aki notices that Iroha is being a lot kinder than usual, so he asks if her demons were exorcised or something. She explains that it's just her way of showing appreciation to them since they invited her to dinner, despite the fact that she is not an official member of the Fifth Floor Alliance. Aki then glazes Ozuma for creating a computer program that helps Sumire meet the deadline, but Ozuma returns the glazing excessively. He explains how all their talent would have been wasted if Aki hadn't brought them all together as a team. Speaking of which, he asks where the last member is, and Aki says they couldn't make it due to personal matters. He then recalls how he also discovered their last member at a book event and sent a letter, which was enough to get them on the team. Minutes later, Aki sees that Sumire has completely lost her touch with reality. So he asks Iroha what she has been drinking and gets shocked when Iroha pulls out a massive bottle. After getting Sumire under control, He tells them about a new plan of his to throw a welcome party for Mashiro. Iroha immediately reminds him that she hates his guts, but Aki says he is ready to make her hate him even more. The next day, he rings Mashiro's doorbell until she answers, but the moment he mentions the dinner party, she slams the door in his face. The very next day, he goes back and sees that she disabled the doorbell, so he starts knocking instead. Mashiro still rejects his invitation, so Aki decides to take it up a notch and starts asking her about it every time he gets the chance. For the rest of the week, he floods her lockers with invitation cards and publicly humiliates himself on a regular basis just to get her to say yes, but Mashiro still rejects him. A day before the party, Aki goes shopping with Iroha and quickly regrets that decision when she tries to feed him a sausage in front of everyone. Naturally, he refuses, but then she makes the seller believe that they are dating, and she starts pressuring Aki until he agrees. Just as he tries to take a bite, Iroha pulls back and tells him to beg for it. Despite wanting to rip her head off her spine, he controls his anger to keep the peace. Then, as they continue shopping, he asks Iroha how she can easily claim to love someone. After she says that she actually loves him, he ignores the obvious green flag and says that she is the direct opposite of Mashiro. Iroha then asks about his progress with the invitation, and after Aki says that she is still rejecting him, Iroha says that he is not taking it seriously. He gets surprised by this, so Iroha reminds him that he was a lot more aggressive while trying to get Ozuma on his team. While he thinks about what she just said, she tries to reach a can at the top of the shelf and eventually slips, so Aki catches her and asks if she will ever stop looking for ways to feel his lightsaber. Meanwhile, Mashiro is back at her place, folding up Aki's invites and promising that she won't go to the party. The next day, in class, Aki thanks Ozuma for working on the last-minute project for Mashiro's party. Then, he calls the rest of the gang to make sure they are ready for the night before finding Mashiro at the lockers. For the first time ever, he doesn't say a word about the party. Instead, he offers to walk home with her, but just as he puts on his shoes, Mashiro runs away, so he chases after her. When she asks why he won't leave her alone, Aki claims he is just heading home. So she takes a detour, but Aki continues chasing after her. Eventually, she stops by the river to catch her breath, and when he shows up, she tells him to stop trying because she can't join a group that was already created before she showed up. Aki agrees that it can be a bit much, but he also asks if she has made any effort to create a group of her own or even make friends with others in school. Mashiro remains silent, so he asks if this is the life she wants to live after making all this effort to start fresh. He then says she can hate him all she wants as long as she stops lying to herself about her feelings. Just as he tries to check on her, she pushes back again and ends up in the water. Aki also falls in while trying to help, but when he looks up, his brain goes into overdrive because the water made Mashiro look even hotter than she already is. Minutes later, they sit on the grass, trying to dry off. And when Aki jokes about them looking like a real couple because of their soaked clothes, she starts laughing, which surprises him as he never thought it was possible. After a couple more jokes, Mashiro admits that she doesn't hate him. She just can't handle the pressure of joining another friend group because they might toss her to the curb like some stagehand. Surprisingly, Aki says he can relate because he was also treated like an irrelevant side character by everyone in school until she showed up. Mashiro asks how this is possible when he is already a successful game developer and founder of the Fifth Floor Alliance. Aki then explains how he decided to keep the gaming group secret from everyone at school because he doesn't want to get distracted by all the attention it might bring. Minutes later, they get back home, and Mashiro still refuses to come to the party because she doesn't think his friends will accept her so easily. After Aki calmly accepts her decision, she notices that her door is open, so he decides to go in with her just in case someone broke in. As they slowly walk in, Aki says something about respecting her final decision and lightly pushes her inside, where Ozuma and the girls surprise her. As Mashiro struggles to understand how they got into her place, Aki says this is actually his apartment. He just had Ozuma and the girls create a virtual projection wall to make it look like her place. Before Mashiro can run off, Iroha tells her that they are not actually friends yet. They just work together because they live on the same floor. Mashiro gets surprised by this, and after Aki assures her that she will never feel left out with them, she agrees to stay for the party. A long while back, Aki met Azuma outside a locked laboratory at school and asked if he could continue doing his experiments at home. Azuma was surprised but asked if he would come over to see them if he did. After Aki agreed, they became friends and started the bond that would lead to the creation of the Fifth Floor Alliance. One day, Aki got back home and found Ozuma staring at the floor tiles, so he asked if something was wrong, and Ozuma said he was just counting how many tiles were used in the entire building. Before Aki could ask if he was finally losing it, he admitted that he had left his key at home and just got stuck, so Aki asked how long his parents would take. Just as Ozuma told him not to worry, Iroha got back as well, so Ozuma introduced her to Aki, and she was shocked to hear that her loner brother had finally made a friend. The next day, in class, Aki was asking Ozuma why he never spoke about Iroha when a chick walked in and had everyone's heads turning because she had just been suspended. The next moment, Otoi interrupted Ozuma and Aki's conversation so they could talk outside. Minutes later, they got to a quiet corner behind the school building, and when she suddenly offered them lollipops, Aki reminded her that it was against the rules to have them in school. Otoi then told him not to worry, especially since it was coming from someone who loves skipping school. Surprised, he asked if she wasn't actually suspended, and after saying that she never did anything that bad, she asked if they knew Iroha. After Ozuma said she was his sister, Otoi asked about her personality, but Ozuma suddenly froze up. Aki noticed this and became worried because Ozuma usually answers questions at the speed of sound. He then asked Otoi why she wanted to know, so Otoi explained how Iroha seemed like the type who liked being around people like them. Basically, she liked students who acted like outcasts and wanted to know if she was really like that, so they could add her to the friend group. After she left, Aki asked Ozuma if he was having problems with Iroha because it was not like him to be struggling with an answer. Ozuma then said he didn't really have a relationship with Iroha, which confused Aki because they seemed close just the other day. When he asked if their parents knew about this, Ozuma said his dad traveled a lot and his mom was always busy, so they were mostly left alone. After taking a minute to think, Aki asked if he could come over after school for a gaming session. Hours later, they got back to Ozuma's place, and Aki got surprised to see that their living room was like a desert. When he brought it up, Ozuma said they never actually use it, and he spent all this time in his room. Aki couldn't believe this until Ozuma let him inside his room, which mostly looked like a dumpster. Aki ignored the obvious lack of hygiene and immediately started glazing Ozuma for building his own computer, but Ozuma said it was something anyone could do. As they started playing games, Iroha got back from school, so Aki waited for a couple of minutes before saying that he wanted to use the bathroom. Once outside, he snuck to Iroha's door and tried to eavesdrop to figure out what kind of person she was, but she suddenly opened the door and had Aki's face right in front of her cookie. Before she could flip out, Aki held her mouth shut and went inside before saying that he just wanted to talk. The moment he released Iroha, she knocked him down with a brutal slap and asked if he had become obsessed with her after their first meeting the other day. Aki immediately said it was not like that, but her phone started ringing, so she answered and told her friend to talk later so she could deal with something. After she hung up, Aki asked if she was trying to become a delinquent at school, but Iroha got pissed and said it was none of his business. When he continued asking and said he was just trying to look out for his buddy's sister, she got even more upset and said no one asked him. The next day, Aki left school early to look for Tachibana, the girl Iroha was talking to on the phone. He had heard that she liked playing music on the streets, so he kept searching through the blistering heat until he found her. As soon as he mentioned his name, Tachibana realized who he was because Iroha had mentioned how he was eavesdropping on her. However, as Aki tried to explain himself, the heat finally got to his head, knocking him out cold. Tachibana panicked and immediately called Otoi, who spent the rest of the day nursing Aki back to health with her glistening thighs. The next day, at a restaurant, Aki finally got to speak to both Tachibana and Iroha. He started by asking Tachibana why she had to ditch school to pursue her dream of making music when she could easily do it while still being a student. He then asked Iroha why she was so obsessed with being a delinquent, but Iroha got upset, so Tachibana told him to stop interrogating her. When he insisted on knowing why she was doing all that to herself, Tachibana said that Iroha just admired her. Aki immediately thought they were in love, but Iroha explained that she simply admired Tachibana because she did whatever she wanted with full confidence. Tachibana then told Aki that Iroha's mom doesn't let her have any hobbies, and Aki realized that this is probably why there was no television in their apartment. However, Tachibana said that Iroha still obeys her mom like a good girl. This made Aki wonder why she suddenly wants to hang around delinquents, but after thinking about it, he realized that she just wanted a change in her boring life. Then, he promised to fix everything so Iroha could experience the freedom she wanted without compromising her morals. After paying for his share of the food, he raced back home and asked Ozuma if they could make a game together. After weeks of work, they finally came up with a test model, and after playing it for a while, Aki suggested inviting Iroha and her friends to play it as well. Minutes later, Iroha and Tachibana pull up to Ozuma's room and, after a little convincing, they agree to test the game out. After hours of playing, they all meet in the living room, and the girls complain about the cheap music and boring graphics. However, Tachibana admits that it was a pretty interesting game, and Aki reminds her of the games they used to play when they were younger. He explains how exciting it felt back then and says they can make viral games as long as they keep it engaging and simple. Then, he admits that they do need help with stuff like music before asking Tachibana and Iroha if they can join the team. While Tachibana gets shocked, Iroha wonders why they asked her when she has zero talent, but Aki says it doesn't matter since she is Ozuma's sister. Tachibana panics and says she can't accept their proposal without Otto's permission, but then Aki shows her a text from Otto, approving the request. Just then, Iroha says she won't be joining and runs off before they can even try to change her mind. However, Aki hasn't given up on her just yet, so he runs out to find her. Minutes later, he hears her talking to someone in a nearby park about being useless to the team. However, when he walks out, she hides, and he gets shocked because the second voice he heard was actually hers. Roha then tells him not to say a word, but Aki says he is actually impressed. Despite this, Roha refuses to come out and blames him for spying on her. Then, she asks if he plans to blackmail her now that he knows her secret, but Aki says that he is just impressed. She gets surprised when she realizes that he means it, so she comes out and joins him on the bench. After saying that he initially thought she was talking to 3 different people, Aki starts glazing Roha again and asks how she discovered the talent. She then tells him how she became obsessed with acting out anime scenes years ago. However, when her mom found out, she got upset and became extremely strict, which is why they ended up with a boring house. Roha still couldn't give up acting, so she started making up characters on her own. After hearing all this, Aki commends her again and says that his mom used to work with a lot of actors, which is how he knew that she had some serious talent. Roha then admits that he had a way of seeing people for who they really were, but she still rejects his offer because it would be a betrayal of her mom. This made Aki realize that she started following Tachibana because she wanted someone else to force her into a situation where she would have to use her talent. That way, she wouldn't be directly betraying her mom or going against her wishes. The next moment, Aki promises to be the bad influence she needed and promises to keep it hidden from her mom as she joins the team, but Roha asks why he is doing all that for her. Aki then says it was because she is Ozuma's sister, which made her his responsibility as well. After finally accepting, Roha asks Aki to call her by name instead of always referring to her as Ozuma's sister. Days later, she shows up at his place and accuses him of using her secrets to get some sloppy brain, but after heading inside, he gives her some references and says they would help with her voice acting. When Roha suggests hiding it in her room, Aki tells her to never underestimate the power of a paranoid mother. Instead, he offers to let her practice in his place whenever she wants. As the days go by, they both take every opportunity to work on her voice acting until eventually, Otoy invites them over to her place to show them a studio she had built with her inheritance. Aki immediately starts treating her like a goddess, but then she asks how he plans to hire more voice actors for the game. After he tells her to sit back and watch, Roha enters the booth and spends the rest of the night blowing Otoy's mind. Weeks later, they are back at the bench where it all started, and after talking about the movie they just watched, Roha thanks Aki for everything he had done for her and Ozuma. She further explains how she and Ozuma started talking again and how he said being around Aki made him feel seen. The next moment, Aki gives Roha brand new headphones and a spare key to his place so she could come over and continue working on her voice acting or enjoy any of the shows and music she loved. Back in the present, Roha is still gushing over what happened that day as she stares at the key. Then, Aki asks how things are going at her place, and after saying it's mostly the same, Roha thanks him again for coming into their lives and making it better. After they both talk about how Tachibana went to the States to keep making music, Roha suddenly hugs Aki and says she doesn't like how uptight he gets around her. She says she is tired of just being Ozuma's sister to him, so Aki takes a moment to think and agrees with her. However, instead of taking her to the bedroom, he asks if she can go out with him and the rest of the gang so they can become proper friends. Later that night, Roha is in the bath, cleaning up her milkers and getting pissed at herself for wanting Aki to ask her out on a date. Then, she realizes that Ozuma and Sumer won't be able to hang out with them, which means it's going to be her, Aki, and Mashiro. The next day, Aki shows up at the meeting spot and, as predicted, he only sees Roha and Mashiro. After they both call him scum for making them wait, Roha suddenly grabs his arm and says this is how she acts with all her friends. Aki immediately tells her to get off and reminds her that he is not one of her little girlfriends, but Roha refuses. The next moment, Mashiro grabs his second arm and insists on holding him as well. Left with no choice, Aki submits to them and suggests that they start the hangout by watching a movie. Minutes later, they find a theater nearby, so Roha suggests watching a classic romance movie, but Mashiro wants to watch something uncommon instead. She argues that Roha's movie choice is cliché and proves that she just follows the crowd, but Roha tells her to stop thinking she is hot stuff just because she watches boring things. As they both continue arguing, Aki suggests going to watch the movie separately and meeting up afterwards, but they both refuse and call him dumb for even thinking about it. In the end, they play rock, paper, scissors, and Roha wins, so they watch the romance movie. Hours later, they head out and, after Aki admits that it was a fun watch, they find a spot to sit. Then, Roha decides to use the restroom, and after she leaves, Mashiro admits that she doesn't know how to handle being around her. Aki says that Roha is actually a pretty chill person, but Mashiro says that is not the problem. The issue is that Roha reminds her of the people who made her life miserable in her previous school. Right then, two chicks recognize Mashiro and tease her for going on a date with Aki, but he immediately tells them to cut it out. After telling Aki to chill out, they ask Mashiro if he knows about a certain novel, and this terrifies her, so she begs them not to talk about it. As they continue laughing, Aki gets up and calls them disgusting before asking them to leave again. This time, the girls refuse and tell him to stop acting all high and mighty because they also have a scary guy with them. Aki then says his people are way worse, but in reality, he can only think of Sumire. Thankfully, his confident grin is enough to chase the girls away. However, when he tries to check on Mashiro, she gets embarrassed and runs away. Just then, Iroha gets back and tells Aki that they have to find her, so they both take off in different directions. Minutes later, Aki realizes that he is just searching pointlessly, so he takes a moment to think and remembers the movie Mashiro wanted to watch. Then, he joins her in the theater and asks if she is enjoying the movie. After explaining how a bully character lost her life and saying that she deserved it, she asks Aki why he came here. He says he just wanted to watch it as well, but she calls him a stalker. Aki accepts the insults and tells her to keep going if it makes her feel better. He even gives her a couple of new ones she can try on her bullies, but he knows she is not ready for that yet. Mashiro then explains how she always felt awkward and alone, which is why she started writing a novel a while ago to escape reality. After the bullies found it and started making fun of her, her entire world fell apart because the one thing she enjoyed was destroyed. When Aki says her writing is pretty cool, Mashiro gets shocked. Then, he name drops a famous author and says they did the exact same thing and wrote about a fictional life that resonated with a lot of people. He goes on to say that she shouldn't feel bad about what happened, but Mashiro says the famous author he mentioned would also feel embarrassed if people discovered their true identity. Aki agrees but says there are tons of people who will still love the novels, so it doesn't matter if a couple of nutjobs think it's cringe. Mashiro finally agrees, but then she refuses to become friends with Iroha because she looks just like the bullies and might also make fun of her in the future. After Aki assures her that he will stop Iroha if she ever tries it, they head back upstairs. The next moment, Mashiro sees Iroha laughing with the bullies and hides behind Aki, but he tells her to watch closely. Then, Iroha starts hurling insults at the bullies, calling them a bunch of washed-up hoes with nothing better to do with their lives. As they both try to fight back, Iroha changes personalities into a blood-hungry demon, ready to rip their throats out for talking badly about Mashiro. Mashiro gets shocked by this and asks what is going on, so Aki explains how Iroha can completely transform herself by taking on the role of a made-up character. As everyone in the mall watches, the girls ask Iroha why she is doing all this if she isn't even friends with Mashiro, but she says it doesn't matter because she treats all shameless scum the same. However, right as she is about to rearrange their faces, Aki stops her and reminds the bullies that he warned them earlier. They both immediately start begging, so he decides to let them off with a warning to never bother Mashiro again. After they both run off, Iroha thanks Aki for saving her because she was only putting on an act with her voice. He then asks why she got so upset, so Iroha explains how nasty the bullies sounded while talking about Mashiro, who then walks out and apologizes for thinking she was one of them. After Iroha tells her not to worry about it, Mashiro asks if they can become friends, and Iroha gladly accepts. The following evening, Aki meets up with Mashiro's dad for dinner, and the middle-aged Riz Lord starts thanking him for helping Mashiro make so much progress in so little time. He then asks about Iroha because Mashiro already mentioned her. But before Aki can go into detail, Makoto says he already knows that she is behind all the voices in his game. Before Aki can ask, Makoto promises to keep it a secret and reminds him to keep his nuts away from Mashiro. Aki says he has nothing to worry about since Mashiro doesn't even like him, but Makoto knows that he is just a clueless airhead. Around the same time, Mashiro is in bed, thinking about when Aki mentioned the famous author, because it's actually her, just with a different name to hide her identity. She decides to keep it hidden from him because she wants to get even closer and build a real relationship with him. Later on, Aki returns home and almost blows Iroha's eardrums to smithereens. Then, he notes that she uses the headphones almost every time, and she explains how it has greatly improved her voice acting. After thanking him for it, she admits that she wanted to make Mashiro jealous, but the bullies ruined everything. Just then, he gets a text, so she decides to take a look, only to get shocked when they read the love confession. The next day, in a dream, Aki is shocked to see Mashiro waking him up to eat a seafood bowl. After he asks why she is in his bed so early in the morning, she tells him to stop stressing about the small stuff and suddenly pushes him back into bed. As she climbs, he remembers the text she sent and tries to stop her, but she shuts him up with a kiss. After several failed attempts to resist, he accepts the kiss, but then he wakes up and realizes that it was just Iroha sticking a popsicle in his mouth. Pissed off, he asks why she can't act like a regular person for once. She then says he should be excited that she is in his bed, but Aki says he can never get turned on by a psycho. At this, Iroha asks what he would prefer and uses the popsicle to demonstrate some of her skills. When he tells her to stop playing and get off the bed, she notices him staring at her jugs and asks if he wants them. However, Aki is tired of all the teasing, so he asks why she even came here so early. That's when Iroha shows him the clock, and he panics because it's already past 8. When he asks if she messed with the clock as part of her creepy obsession with ruining his life, she says he actually woke up late and asks why he is acting like the world is about to end. He then asks if this is a holiday, as that would explain his lateness, but she says it's actually a weekday and they still have school. Aki panics again and says he must be sick, but Iroha says the only problem is his mental health because he is seriously overreacting. Minutes later, Aki is in the bathroom, getting ready and wondering how to react to Mashiro's sudden confession. With no time to waste, he runs out with Iroha so they can get to school on time. When Iroha asks why he just won't go late for once, Aki says it will affect his perfect attendance. However, his main concern is Sumer and the humiliating speech she gives to late students. Just then, Iroha realizes that they are the only students walking together, so she asks Aki if he is worried about people getting the wrong idea. He says it shouldn't be a problem, since Makoto isn't anywhere close to them, but when Iroha mentions Mashiro, he panics and tells her to cut it out. She then tells him to get his act together because he will never lose his V card at this rate. Before he can react, she suddenly pulls him closer and offers to be his test subject if he wants to practice some strokes for Mashiro. Aki calmly rejects the offer and says she can't get him flustered unless she attacks him in his sleep. Iroha gets a little upset that he is not reacting like he usually does, but then he runs off to avoid more teasing. Minutes later, in class, Aki tries to talk to Mashiro, but she hits him with a nasty glare and tells him to shut his mouth. He then wonders if she is the same person who texted him last night, but then she sends a couple more texts explaining that she is embarrassed. She also says she bought a cute outfit just for him, but she hates the uniform, so he shouldn't even try saying anything to her. As Aki wonders how he will deal with this, Sumer shows up and says they are all lucky that no one is late. After Aki remembers how she was begging the other day, she tells them about a drama fair coming up and says her drama club is recruiting new members to represent them. After she leaves, Ozuma asks Aki why he came late today, and after he says it was nothing, Ozuma tells him to be careful of burning out. After Aki says the same thing, Ozuma gives him a recent draft of the backstory to their game and says it was a horrible read. The popular author he mentioned the other day, who is secretly Mashiro, apparently writes for them, although they have never met in person. After taking a look as well, Aki admits that the author seems to be losing touch with reality because the game has a horror theme and she is writing about true love. Just then, Mashiro glances over suspiciously because they both seem a little too close to be just friends. This makes Aki even more confused because he can't figure out her current attitude or what on earth happened to their author. While all this is happening, Iroha is in her class, wondering why she acted so differently with Aki today. Just then, a classmate tells her that Mashiro is waiting outside, so she heads out and acts like life is all rainbows and sunshine. Mashiro notices and asks if something is up, but Iroha signals her to go along with it. Unfortunately, Mashiro has no idea how to be a regular girl, so she freaks out and apologizes to Iroha for getting it wrong. While realizing how cute she is, Iroha notices the small crowd gathering, so she grabs Mashiro and runs to somewhere private. Mashiro then asks if something happened to Aki because she also noticed that he came late, which practically never happens. Confused, Iroha asks why she won't just ask Aki himself, so Mashiro explains that things are pretty awkward between them. This makes Iroha realize that Aki hasn't given Mashiro a response, and the fact that she knows about the message also makes her a bad friend. To make matters worse, Mashiro looks so innocent as she worries about Aki, making it impossible for Iroha to see her as a rival. After taking a second to breathe, she tells Mashiro not to worry because he just overslept a little. Mashiro then says she won't be able to eat lunch with him because he will probably get flustered and awkward, but Iroha tells her to stop overthinking it because he could definitely use the company. When Mashiro still expresses concern for him, Iroha realizes that one conversation with Aki will make him fall head over heels in love with Mashiro. Just then, the bell rings, so Mashiro asks if she can come to her for help again. Her cute face almost gives Iroha a heart attack, but she holds back and reminds Mashiro that they are friends now, so she can talk to her whenever she wants. Much later, Aki is at the cafeteria, wondering what is wrong with Mashiro because she brutally turned him down when he asked to eat together. Just then, Iroha shows up, and after the usual teasing, Aki asks if she can help him understand what is going on with Mashiro. After reminding her of the text, he says he has no idea what to do because it's the first time a girl has ever confessed to him. Iroha suddenly holds herself back and asks if it's really the first time, to which he says yes and asks what is going on with her. The next moment, she blows up, saying he only sees girls like Mashiro as pretty while the others are basically walking mannequins. After cursing him to see every girl as pretty, she storms out, leaving Aki to wonder why his small social circle is falling apart. Just then, Sumer summons him to the counseling office, but instead of another disappointment, she shows him the illustration that she finished way ahead of schedule. However, Aki completely loses it and asks why everyone is suddenly acting so strangely. Sumer gets shocked by this, but he quickly apologizes and thanks her for doing a good job. As he gets ready to leave, She asks for a favor as the reward for her hard work, but Aki tells her to save it for later because he has a fever and needs to rest. After leaving the office, he stops by a corner to catch his breath and wonders why he can't seem to get things under control like he usually does. Hours later, Aki is in bed, thinking of a way to get his life back together, when he hears someone coming in. As expected, it's Iroha, so he already expects the usual teasing, but she assures him that she only came to take care of him after hearing that he left school early. As he continues staring with confusion, she tells him to go back to bed so she can focus on making him something to eat. Minutes later, she walks in with a hot meal and offers to feed it to him, which makes Aki even more suspicious because she is never this kind to him. As he wonders what her angle is, she blows on the food and feeds him a spoon before assuring him that she just wants to help him get better. After reminding him of how he always prioritizes good health, she says he was probably far more exhausted than he thought. Minutes later, she packs up the dishes and promises to head out after cleaning up. After she closes the door, Aki continues staring and imagines her coming back and saying that she was only messing around, but she actually leaves. Then, she sends a text saying that this is how she will act towards him going forward, but he gets even more confused and thinks she is trying to become the opposite of Mashiro. As he continues scrambling for answers, Ozuma calls and asks if something happened between him and Iroha because she came back and immediately shut herself in the room. After he also asks Aki how he is feeling, Aki commends him for being so perceptive, but Ozuma says he actually built a system to monitor his heart rate at all times. Aki gets a little creeped out, so he denies it and asks if he is okay. After recalling Mashiro's confession and worrying about how she will feel if he blabs about it, Aki wonders if he can tell Ozuma. However, Ozuma can already tell that he is keeping a secret, so he tells Aki to handle it on his own, but to also prioritize his health. With that out of the way, he reminds Aki about the horrible draft their author sent, and Aki decides to reject it on the platform, but he also expects the author to push back. Ozuma then offers to support him if it comes to that, so Aki thanks him and hangs up before checking if he can get any work done. The next day, in class, Aki's brain fully recovers, so he decides to get started with work by looking through the messages on the team's group chat. Just then, he notices Mashiro ferociously typing something and wonders if it's one of her novels. He then wonders if he will have to respond to her confession through text since they can't seem to have a regular conversation. Minutes later, he heads out, but Sumire stops him and asks if he is better. After he says yes, she reminds him of his promise to help her out, but he immediately says he will get pissed if it's something stupid. Sumire then says that her life depends on it and takes him to the counseling office, where she drops to the floor and begs him to save the drama club. She explains that losing the regional preliminaries in the upcoming fair will lead to the club being disbanded, but Aki says that will be a good thing since she will have more time to focus on the team's projects. She then explains that the club president is her little sister, who does everything she says and runs the club on her own to make life easier for Sumire. If the club gets shut down, Sumire will get reassigned to the tennis club, and since their coach is on maternity leave, she will have to train them every day, which means less time for anything else. When Aki asks why she is even being considered as a good coach for the hardcore tennis team, Sumire freezes, making him realize that she did something stupid. Turns out, the principal once asked if she played sports, and, instead of answering, she flexed her jubs in the poor old man's face and almost gave him a heart attack while acting like she is the female version of David Goggins. After Aki tells her to fix her own mistakes, she continues begging and reminds him that she won't be able to do any work if the drama club fails. Despite being pissed, he realizes that she is right and agrees to at least watch one of their practice sessions. Much later, she takes him to the abandoned classroom the club uses and slightly opens the door so they can watch Midori, her little sister. Just then, Aki realizes that she is the super smart student who has been topping his entire year since she enrolled. This also makes him confused since she should be a capable club leader, but they keep watching as she leads the girls for a voice work session. Then, she decides to do a dress rehearsal, and the entire classroom transforms into a fully developed set. As Aki wonders why they even need his help, the performance begins, but what starts as a beautiful presentation quickly takes a turn for insanity as Midori makes the girls present a play about stupid chemical elements no one cares about. After he realizes why Sumire asked for his help, the play ends, and Midori gives the team 80 points for their performance. Aki immediately storms in and asks if she has completely lost it, because that abomination of a play deserves to be trashed forever. As Midori starts defending her insanity, Sumire walks in and explains that Aki will be observing them. Midori then asks if he is the last member she was talking about, but Sumire says he is a producer who will give them the victory they have all been dreaming of. Still, Midori remains skeptical and asks how such a weird-looking dude can help them, so Sumire claims that he has actually produced a ton of hit Hollywood movies. The energy in the room completely changes as the girls start gushing over Aki, but then Midori demands to know what relationship he has with Sumire because she knows that Hollywood producers are a bunch of creeps who use their power to crack hot shotties. When Aki says he would never want Sumire, Midori gives him all the reasons why she's the perfect catch, but Aki gets tired of defending himself and leaves. Sumire stops him by the stairs and begs him to reconsider, but he says they already have enough on their plate with the gaming team, and that he can't handle another person's problems. With that said, he leaves while Sumire continues begging. Later that day, Iroha heads to the lockers and wonders why Aki never takes her seriously, but Mashiro already has him second-guessing himself. The next moment, Mashiro shows up and asks what she is doing. She then claims she was just about to head out and asks why she is still in school, so Mashiro explains how she went to the library to read and found a bunch of books to take home. After taking a look at them, Iroha admits to being surprised that she reads these kinds of books, but Mashiro says she is just trying them out as references. Iroha then asks why she needs references for novels, but Mashiro panics and says it's nothing because no one can know about her secret identity. Mashiro then suggests heading home together, but Iroha panics because she can't talk about her secret voice acting job for Aki. After she says she has a part-time job that involves using her mouth, Mashiro panics and thinks she gobbles pickles for a living. Iroha quickly assures her that it's nothing like that, but she also teases Mashiro for thinking about that, so she runs off. Much later, Iroha gets to the park and meets Aki, who initially acts a little weird before saying it's nothing. As they head towards Otoi's studio, Aki gets tired of her new behavior and tells her to drop the facade. When Iroha asks what he is talking about, he says he is tired of the act, but she claims that this is who she has always been. When he continues arguing that she should just go back to making his life miserable, Iroha says she is just trying to get close to him without the usual drama. Aki then realizes that he could use the peace and quiet, so he agrees. Minutes later, they show up at the studio, and after threatening to pound their brains in if they make another last-minute request, Otoi asks for her payment. Aki then hands over the pastries he bought and prays that she likes them. Turns out, they offered her payment for using the studio at first, but she declined and said the studio was actually just a hobby she wanted to try out, not an actual job. As time passed, she would often turn down a studio session just because she didn't feel like it, so Aki offered to bring pastries every time as payment. Back in the present, she accepts the pastries, so Iroha grabs the script and heads into the booth, while Adetoi tells Aki that a professional voice actor would demand a script days before a session. He then tells her that Iroha can fully memorize a script after 5 minutes of reading because of the way she grew up. After Otoi agrees with him, they give Iroha the cue to start with the voice of a thug. When she suddenly starts talking like a respectful young lady, Otoi stops the recording and asks if she's being serious. Surprised, Iroha asks if she didn't get it right, and while Aki freezes in shock, Otoi tells her to try another voice. Minutes later, Otoi gives up and asks if she is proud of this recording. After Iroha says she made sure to create something Aki would love, he loses it and tells her to stop playing around. As Iroha freezes in the booth, Aki tries to yell at her again, but Otoi shuts him up with a lollipop and decides to end the session. Minutes later, Aki thanks her for the lollipop and admits that he might have said something wrong if she hadn't stopped him. She then asks what really happened and says he has to come clean since she gave him an indirect kiss. Minutes later, Aki gives her the backstory and says he feels like he's being played on both sides. After asking why he is playing the victim, Otoi says she actually knows a lot about who's being played because she spent most of her time playing other people. Then, she says that Mashiro must be a cutie for him to be so flustered over her, but Aki claims he is only doing this for her dad. Otoi then warns him to never let anything happen that might stop Iroha from using her talents. After further explaining how she fully immersed herself in the supporter's role to help Iroha excel, she brings up Mashiro again. Aki still claims that he is only holding up his end of the deal with her dad, so Otoi drags him into her melons and holds him still. She then tells him to listen to her beating heart while she explains how even someone like her will get flustered in this situation. She further explains how impossible it is to ignore your own feelings in romantic situations, and this makes Aki realize that he handled Mashiro's confession completely wrong, and now it's affecting his other relationships. After thanking Otoi for helping him think clearly, Aki heads out and sends Mashiro a text, promising to give her a response over dinner. Later that night, they both show up for the date, but Mashiro gets worried that he is spending too much when she can have her dad cover it. After saying that his game has actually made a lot of money, Aki notices that she really likes the restaurant. Mashiro admits it and says it's the first time she can look at other couples without wishing for a stray bullet to take them out. Minutes later, they go to take in the view, and he finally uses the opportunity to bring up her confession. After suddenly stopping him, Mashiro says she already expected his rejection because he didn't say anything about it for the last few days. She also says he did it out of kindness for her, but Aki says he was actually being selfish because he didn't want to ruin his deal with her dad. However, Mashiro insists that he was being kind because of the rejection, but she had already accepted it. Then, she promises to make him fall for her one day, and when he says that might never happen, she teases him about being so pessimistic. After she leaves, Aki heads to Ozuma's place and thanks him for letting him come to see Iroha so late at night. Ozuma says it's nothing to worry about since their mum is not home, and he also wishes Aki luck with Roha. Moments later, Aki starts knocking on her door and says he knows what time she sleeps, so she shouldn't bother pretending. Roha refuses and asks what he wants, so he asks for a chance to talk about what happened in the studio. After she reminds him that he crashed out on her, he agrees that he went overboard instead of accepting what he had done wrong. Roha still refuses to talk, and after minutes of begging, Aki threatens to break the door down. She then tells him to go ahead, thinking it's a joke, but he actually breaks the door down and gives her money to fix it. Then he drops to his knees to apologize and says he just rejected Mashiro. Roha calmly asks why he would do that, like it's not the best news she has just heard. Aki then says he never wanted to be with her romantically because his only focus is on their team. However, he also admits that he let it get to his head, which in turn affected their relationship. After apologizing again and begging her to continue doing what she does best, he returns her headphones. Surprisingly, Roha admits that she has been jealous and reminds Aki of the promise he made when they first formed the team. He promised to make sure they succeed as quickly as possible, but for that to happen, he would devote himself fully to the team and avoid everything else. This is why she always messed with him because, deep down, she knew he wouldn't break his focus. However, when Mashiro showed up, he suddenly had more time to spare and gave it all to her. Upon hearing this, Aki reminds her that he needs to keep up the fake relationship with her to get their team the help it needs through Mashiro's dad. Just then, Roha admits that she knows and says she started acting up because she felt jealous seeing him spend all his time with Mashiro. Then, she apologizes for doing too much, and Aki asks if she felt jealous in a romantic sense. After an awkward pause, Roha starts teasing him for mistaking a little friendship jealousy for real feelings. She then pulls out a recording of him asking the corny question and decides to start blackmailing him with it. When he reminds her of the risk of carrying that around, she still insists on keeping it, and asks if he only came here to beg her. After thanking her for using what's left of her brain, he admits that he needs her help and the rest of the team to pull off something impossible. The next day, at school, Otoi and Ozuma hear about Midori's psychodrama club and are impressed that Aki always has something going on. After saying that the team needs the drama club to win, they head inside, and Midori immediately attacks him. He stops her, but she starts arguing about his skills again and refuses to let him take over the drama club. He then tries to explain that he is just helping Sumer, but Midori accuses him of taking her sister to Pound Town and wanting to turn her innocent club girls into his love slaves. This makes Aki realize that she is a worse creep than Sumire, but with no time to waste, he asks Midori if she no longer trusts Sumire since she is the one behind the idea. This finally makes Midori rethink her hatred for him, but then he goes a step further and admits that they are really dedicated to their club. However, until they tweak a couple of things with his help, they will keep working themselves to the bone for a goal they can reach. He once again offers his help, but Midori still meditates, so Aki tells her to stop worrying about his relationship with Sumire because the only special person in his life is Ozuma. Everyone, including Sumire, gets shocked by this, and Midori finally agrees to work together, so they get started with a new play. Thankfully, Aki recalls the script they rejected days back and decides to use it for the play instead. After the girls all take a minute to read it and start bawling their eyes out, Ozuma agrees that it was a good plan. However, they would need a whole new budget to set up another stage for the play, but Ozuma promises to take care of it. With the two main problems sorted out, Midori reminds Aki that they can't just change everything about the way her girls act. After telling her not to worry, Aki says he already called a top-of-the-line instructor to help them become Hollywood stars. Moments later, the girls enter a dark room and meet the instructor, who is just Roha in a cheap disguise. After Aki explains how important it is for her identity to remain hidden, Midori demands to see what the overhyped instructor can actually do. Roha then grabs the script and says she will be acting out an entire scene for them. Within minutes, the girls go from doubting her to becoming obsessed fans desperate to see more. As the days go on, everyone on the team goes all out to help the drama club win. With help from the mystery author, Aki corrects the play's story until it is perfect. Then, Ozuma uses that supercomputer in his brain to create a program just for the stage performance. On the other hand, Otoi uses her sound effects skills to upgrade what the club already came up with. All that's left is Roha, who is currently losing her mind because Midori and the others still don't know how to act. As Aki wonders what he can do to help, Roha tones down the intensity and calmly tells Midori how to stop sounding like a robot when she acts out the scene. Just then, Aki spots Mashiro spying on him, so he heads out to talk to her. After she gives him a lunch pack and tells him to take care of himself, he reminds her that they are not dating or anything. She immediately tells him to shut it and reminds him that they are dating as far as school is concerned. However, acting all lovey-dovey makes her embarrassed, so she runs off. Then, Aki heads back inside and watches as Roha commends Midori and the others for doing a great job with their acting. As they all thank her and celebrate, Aki notices a slight change in Roha's mood. Later that day, he gets back home, but Roha runs past him and jumps into the bed. When he reminds her that she lives with Ozuma and her parents, Iroha says his bed feels better, and it's probably because she has spent all this time coming over. Just then, she notices him looking away and asks if he wants to see what's under her uniform, but Aki calmly says he is not interested and disinfects his bed from her fish stench. Just as she finally gets up to leave, Aki asks if something happened earlier because he noticed her mood change in school. After subtly asking why he only pays attention to things like that, Iroha admits that she felt a little jealous of the girls because they actually get to act out these characters while she has to hide behind being a voice actress. She wishes that she could at least take credit for her work and show her talent proudly. Just then, Aki promises to make it happen and reminds her that it's the reason he created the Fifth Floor Alliance. When Iroha says he is just making big talk, he admits that it will take a lot of work, but promises to make it happen as long as she is ready to put in the work needed. Much later, a baddie named Kanaria shows up at Mashiro's place and tries to yap about who she is, but Mashiro drags her inside and tells her to zip it. Minutes later, Kanaria learns all about the Fifth Floor Alliance and Mashiro's decision to keep her identity as their author hidden. However, she is mostly focused on Mashiro's latest works because it's all a bunch of lovey-dovey crap, not the miserable, dark stuff she usually writes about. After Mashiro says that she's actually pretty excited about her new writing style, Kanaria panics and tells her to get her act together because they need dark and gloomy Mashiro. The next day, Aki and the girls hold one last rehearsal, and he begins to feel optimistic about their chances at the drama fair. After everyone in the group starts glazing Iroha for making the girls real actresses, Sumire thanks Aki for all the help. He tells her not to worry about it, but she insists on thanking him until he reminds her that there will be severe punishments if she misses her next deadline after all the work he has done. Terrified, she runs off to attend a pep rally for the club ahead of the fair. Ozuma hears this and suggests going as well since they are practically club members at this point. Aki agrees and says he has to clean up the clubroom first so he doesn't feel useless. But Ozuma stops him and reminds him that he assembled this entire team on his own. He then asks Aki about his recent issue with Iroha, and Aki says it's nothing to worry about. When Ozuma also asks about Mashiro, Aki insists that their relationship is fake, just because he doesn't want to talk about Mashiro's feelings just yet. Much later, Aki gets to the clubroom and learns that one of the girls, named Yamada, passed out and has to be taken to the hospital. This means they can't do the play because there is no one else to take her place. Midori starts panicking and says they have to find a way, so Aki glances over at Sumire, but she also has no idea what to do next. Just then, Aki realizes that there is one more person who can play the role, but he also knows that it has to be a personal decision, so he stays quiet. Then, Iroha starts recalling the conversation they had the other day and pulls off her disguise, which leaves everyone stunned. After she decides to play the role, Midori admits that they never expected it to be her. Iroha says they have no time left and asks for her decision, so Midori and the other girls ask her to help them win. Several minutes later, Ozuma tells Aki that their mom might find out, but he will gladly take the risk to see Iroha do what she really wants. After Aki finally admits that she has also been working for the team as a voice actress, Ozuma admits that he already knew before saying that Aki is the only one for her. On the day of the play, Aki ignores the unrelenting rain because an earlier forecast said it should be over soon. Then, he heads to the makeup room, and Iroha immediately asks for his thoughts on her look. After he says it's okay, she asks why virgins can never give proper compliments, but then Aki says he is not actually a virgin. Iroha drops her makeup kit in shock and wonders when and how this happened without her knowing about it. Aki, on the other hand, is pissed that she messed up the kit, but when she asks how he is not a virgin, he explains that virgins are actually just nuns who have decided to keep themselves pure for the Lord. Iroha then asks why he always has some stupid nerdy answer for the most basic stuff. With that out of the way, he asks if she is really ready to reveal who she really is, and she says it won't be a problem since she has him to clean up whatever mess she makes. Just then, Sumire runs in and says that Midori won't make it to the play. Earlier on, she left home thinking she would get to the fair earlier than expected, but then she ran into a lady about to give birth in the rain, so she helped her get an ambulance. However, by the time she was done, all the train stations had been shut down for the play, meaning she wouldn't be able to show up. After the other girls show up and also start to panic, Aki takes a moment to think so he can find a solution, but he gets zero ideas. He then asks to speak with Midori, so Sumire calls her, and she starts bawling her eyes out while still being stuck in the rain. After she apologizes for ruining the play for everyone, Aki asks if she wants to save it, and she immediately says yes, but everyone else is wondering what his plan is. When he suddenly offers to take Midori's place, they all worry that he might be losing it, but then Ozuma, Otoi, and Sumire agree that he can actually take on the role. Turns out, all that team-building effort gave Aki a fraction of every team member's skill, which his natural willpower triples infinitely. With everyone agreeing that he can do it, he asks Midori for permission, and she tells him to save the play. Much later, Iroha applies the final touches to his makeup and admits that he looks good with it, But when she tells him to consider doing it every day, he tells her to forget about turning him into a femboy. Before they can start roasting each other, they get called to the stage for the play. Around the same time, Mashiro makes her way into the theater with the hope of seeing her first romance writing brought to life in the way she envisioned. She always meant it as a way to confess to Aki, so she was surprised when Iroha had to fill in for Yamada at the last minute. However, she accepts this as the only shock she will be getting until Iroha walks out with Aki. As Mashiro struggles to believe her eyes, Aki and Iroha start the play as two bakers struggling to get along due to their family's bad history. As time passes, they work together to bake a massive cake and slowly grow fond of each other to the point where they both acknowledge their talents. However, what starts as friendship quickly changes as Iroha's character develops feelings for him, just as Mashiro did. Over time, Aki's character starts to feel the same, leading to a struggle between them as they battle their emotions and the promise they made to their families. As the play goes on, Mashiro begins to notice that while Aki is actually playing his part pretty well, Iroha seems to be speaking her truth because every time her character confesses her feelings, her eyes light up like someone actually talking to their first love. Of course, Aki has no idea what is happening because he is just saying his lines while Iroha pours her heart out to him. After they finally bow out, Mashiro gets mixed feelings because while she understands how Iroha must feel, she also can't ignore her very real feelings for Aki. Meanwhile, Otoi says she never thought Iroha was this talented, but Ozuma is more concerned with the performance because he also noticed Iroha pouring her heart out to Aki. When he suggests trapping them in a room together until they kiss, Otoi tells him to pump the brakes. By then, they are already backstage, and Midori, who just showed up, thanks Aki for helping them out. After he tells her not to worry about it, she also asks him to thank his author for the amazing script. However, just as he grabs the phone to send the message, Mashiro sends a text through her secret author identity number, apologizing for suddenly coming up with a romance script instead of what she is used to making. Much later, Aki meets Iroha outside the building, and when she asks why he didn't stay inside to collect the award with the girls, he says the trophy belongs to them. She then asks him to praise her for going all out and finally revealing her talents to the world. As always, he gives her a cold compliment, but as they head back inside, Iroha suddenly admits that she meant every word she said. Aki panics immediately, but then she starts laughing at him and promises to keep teasing him. After she runs off, Aki takes a moment to breathe and wonders why everyone close to him acts insane. Will Mashiro give up her love for the sake of her new friendship with Iroha, or will our clueless Riz Lord find a way to crack both their cookies? Comment part 2 to find out, and don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you gooned to this video and want to see our next recap.